everyone's going to need assigned locations around the boss. So you know how you typically assign a cardinal or an inner cardinal. I will be playing from southeast here, but work that out with your team. One tank is going to pick up each boss here. If you have a dot, you can go ahead and dot both of them. Damage, who you're damaging it really isn't that important. The DPS check in this stage isn't that bad. I'd really focus on mechanics first, and once you get the mechanics down, the damage usually we end up usually doing a lot more damage than necessary in this phase. That's not to say it's easy, but it is one of the easier ones of this fight. So I wouldn't worry about damage too much or who you're damaging. We typically open damage on Brute Justice, because that's where the trick attack drops, and then I do damage on Cruise Chaser over the rest of the phase for the most part. But you may want to assign 2 and 2, but the important thing really is that you're hitting one of the bosses and not really which one. So think about it like that. Alright, so first thing that happens, Judgment Nisi. Every player gets assigned a Nisi. It's important at this point that no one is overlapping. Now when you touch a player with the Judgment Nisi over your head, you see I have a pink one here, you will pass it to them. Now you want this to happen sometimes, and you don't want it to happen other times. When you pass it to another player, they will also get a 35-second buff or debuff, whatever you wish to call it. I guess it's listed as a debuff, but it doesn't really do anything until the end. But it is essential for your survival come like 3 minutes later in the fight. So you end up passing this a few times to keep the buff up, because every time you pass it, it resets it to 35 seconds. So we don't pass it right away, because then the countdown timer on the buff starts on the next player. So if I can back up here, we have the first mechanic. Everyone is middle here because we are waiting to bait the chakrams. So we have link up cast, and as soon as link up is cast, you are free to move, you are free to move away from the chakrams. So the chakrams are going to spawn, and even before they're spawned, the target was locked when the link up finished. So we have the chakrams on the outside of the arena, now baited to, they're gonna target 2 random players in the middle, or 2 random players, but we're all in the middle more or less. So the variance is very low. They're gonna run through the center of the stage, and now we're all getting targeted with an invisible explosion under our feet that we can't see. And we're baiting that on the outside of the arena, and then once the chakrams fire, we're going to need to run back in so that the explosions don't kill us. We all just kind of move to the outside of the arena. You can be close to your other teammates. You don't need to have assigned positions on the outside of the arena, but just get out of the way of the chakram. They snapshot pretty early. You saw me come in pretty soon. You can see the cast bar actually in the enemy list. So here are the steam chakrams. As soon as this cast bar is done, you are free to move in. Boom. They're snapshotted, you can move in. And make sure you're not passing the Nisi yet. Once this big AoE goes out, that big damage AoE, now is when you need to start thinking about passing. We have 13 seconds left on the debuff. I would wait till around 10 seconds is kind of the good rule of thumb there. Because players need to start moving to their next destination. So my healer picks up my debuff, and we're going to try and deal with Water 1. So one of the DPS and healers got... One DPS or healer got water, and then one DPS gets lightning. So it's random what you're assigned, but you're assigned it way back in this phase. Before you even run out for chakrams. So you'll see it right here when we get link up. And usually we call it out here. So Bailey got the lightning, Ray got the water. Who gets the water isn't that important. It is for the healers, but not for the DPS, because they end up usually doing the same thing. DPS, you really just want to check if you get lightning here, because because your action in the following phase is going to be different based on that. So if we can move back here, those are the explosions that I mentioned. Yeah, here's the AoE, and this is going to be the Nisi pass. So my healer picks up the Nisi, and then we're going to be resolving Water 1 and Lightning 1. So Bailey is the DPS. He's over by BJ, and he's by our tank. We have one tank on BJ, one tank on Cruise Chaser. Bailey he wants his Lightning AoE to overlap with the tank and no one else. So he needs to share that explosion when the debuff counts down with the tank. And we need the water water debuff to expire around 3 other players. Sorry, 2 other players, but ideally 3 other players. You can survive with 2 other players, but with mitigation, but 3 other players is ideal. So we have assigned positions around a marker that we drop the water AoE. So I have the southeast corner, one healer has the southwest, another healer has the northwest, and then range DPS has the northeast. So the water goes out. This, yeah, it does shared damage. The lightning went off and resolved over there. Now it's time for us all to move into our next positions. There's a lot of mechanics coming up, and it's important that we don't overlap. That's why we have assigned positions around the marker. Once this water drops, the range, the 2 furthest players from Brute Justice are going to be targeted for mines. So the tank on Cruise Chaser and the range DPS come over here to the edge of the arena to bait those mines. As the caster and the healers, we want to work our way towards the middle. The DPS that was over here also wants to work our way towards the middle because we are going to be resolving enumeration soon. I'm following closely my healer. This is typically risky, but if you know things about Final Fantasy and the way the servers are, when players are moving, they're actually in front of where you see them. So I'm actually not that close to taking the Nisi buff from my healer by accident, because she's actually further ahead of me than it looks. And the reason I'm moving so close to her in the first place is because I need to get away from the water that drops here. If you don't move away from the water quick enough, it will explode and wipe the raid. So it's about this distance away that you need to be for the water tower to not explode, the tornado. And you need to get away pretty quickly. You'll notice that was like 3 to 4 seconds. You don't have a lot of time to finish your cast, typically. And here I am. I stand in the middle. We have enumerations coming up. The ranged are baiting. The tank is baiting. The mines over here. We're making sure not to overlap and pass the Nisi buff. We're going to need to be grouped up for this next mechanic, but make sure, as you realize, we're not touching each other. It's important we don't touch. And so this enumeration is a group mechanic here. We have the tank with an ice. He comes over to freeze the water tower. That's the tank mechanic. And we have a flex here. So we have 2 random DPS get the enumerations. And you need 3 people, and no more or no less in each circle to resolve the mechanic without dying. So we have 2 people assigned to 1 group stack, and 2 DPS and a healer assigned to 1 group stack, and 2 DPS and a healer assigned to the other. And there's a melee in each group, and we have we have the ranged of each group, the caster and the ranged DPS, physical range, be the flex, so that if me and my melee partner both got enumeration, that the caster and my physical ranged swap. And as the caster, it's typically my job to call this out, or a melee, because the physical ranged is flexing, but he's on the other side of Cruise Chaser right now, baiting mines. So it's hard for him to see the status of the situation, whether he needs to swap or not. So it helps to identify that for him as he handles that mechanic, and we figure out if any swap is needed. Me and my ninja here did not get enumerations both, nor did the monk and the machinist. So if we didn't have any, or we had two, we would need to do a swap. And that just means, you know, the ranged switch between the groups, and it should fix itself that we have one circle per group. And make sure you switch again without touching anyone with a Nisi. So there's 3 in each group. That's resolved. Next thing that happens here is water 2. So you'll notice I have 11 seconds left on this water debuff. Another water explosion is going to happen, and I need 4 players around me. This water debuff might not have been on me, but it doesn't matter. I would need to be in the next water stack regardless. The water stack, actually having the water debuff does matter for the 3rd water stack. As you'll see in a second. This water debuff makes it so you're not allowed to stack in the next water stack. So that's why it matters. And I'll show you that in a second here. So again, we have assigned positions around the marker. We're going to go to this one marker now to drop the water. And this is going to drop in 1 second here. And once the debuff goes away, it's snapshot. It's time for you to move away, especially if you're in the front of the group. You have people behind you trying to get away from the water tower, and you don't want to block them. So we're all going to move out. Nisi was passed, by the way. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but there's 10 seconds left on my debuff. Quick Nisi pass is going to happen here with the same person I passed it to in the first phase. So my healer passes it to me. His debuff is going to expire, and we're going to handle water 2 here. Everyone else did their Nisi passes as well. Water 2 happens. Everyone needs to move away from the water tower. And you'll notice here I got a 30-second debuff. This is water resistance down. This means I can't be in the next water stack. Okay, so next thing that's going to happen here is we have Cruise Chaser's going to get a shield, a plasma shield. It's just spawned right here. And the DPS, if you're like ranged DPS, I'd recommend targeting this. It doesn't take a lot of damage to burst down. As a caster, I wouldn't recommend targeting it because it has very low health and you might just waste casts targeting it. But you can only hit it if you're in front of it. So the tank is going to bait. You'll notice he's standing here. He's facing it towards the party. If you try and hit this at an angle, you're not going to do any damage to it. And if the shield doesn't break because you were missing it because you weren't at the right angle, that's a raid wipe. So this thing goes down quick. We have our white mage use a Flatus Misery there for big damage. Alright, so shield goes down. Next thing that's going to happen, you're going to take an eye at your debuff here. And you typically do DPS to tank healer here. That's how I'm going to talk about it. But you look at your debuff here. I have the purple Nisi debuff. I need to bring that to a party member that also has the purple debuff. It's my job as the DPS to go through the party list and look for a tank or a healer that has the debuff with exclamation points for the same color Nisi I have. So I see here on my Astrologian, they have a purple debuff with exclamation points on it, corresponding to my purple debuff, the gamma symbol. And that means they are going to need the purple Nisi when judgment is cast upon them. So I need to pass that to the appropriate player, find them here. We're usually all pretty spread out. And let me tell you, this is the most dangerous time for overlapping teammates. Sometimes you are the one without the Nisi, because sometimes it starts on the tank healer or vice versa, and who you've been passing to is instead passing to you. The movement has been the same, but it's just who's getting it and who's passing it are different. It's been flip-flopped. So in this situation, sometimes you don't have the Nisi, and you need to find the tank healer who has it and go get it from them. But one way or another, you typically have the same group of people actually moving. When the DPS are the ones moving, and it's always the DPS, you need to be careful because you're carrying Nisis that cannot touch any other players except the person you're trying to touch. So fortunately for me, I'm touching the Astrologian who's right in front of me because they're the ones with the purple debuff. You'll notice there's a purple debuff with exclamation points on the DPS here, but I'm not looking to pass to a DPS. I am DPS. I'm looking to give this to a tank healer. So I touch them. And then the last thing I do here is going to be water 3. I check my debuff. I remember, okay, I have the water resistance down. I cannot stack for water 3. So I just stay out of the way of everyone. I'm going to move over here. People pass their debuffs, their Nisis, and then they're going to make their way over back to the 1 marker. That's where we drop our water 3. The lightning players go down on the south side, so I really just want to avoid that. There's a healer that gets lightning, and they share it with the tank over there. The water went off over here. Tanks and healers are going to line up behind this ice right here. And then it's going to be the final Nisi pass. You check my debuffs. I have, I need alpha. That's what it's notifying me. I need the blue Nisi hammer. I'm going to see that it's on my tank over here, and I'm going to ethereal manip over to them as soon as possible. I grab it, and I just stay with them behind the ice. Everyone went to do the same thing. They checked their debuff, checked who had it in line, and they don't overlap. You know, the blues stay together as a group of 2, group of 2, group of 2, all in a line behind the ice. And once that AoE happens, final judgment pass, Bastion of the Light be cleansed. You know, you're free to move anywhere. The Nisis don't matter anymore. So these are tank mechanics that are going to resolve from here on. As a DPS, just stay away from the tanks. They're going to take AoE tank hits and stuff like that. Healers need to worry about that. You just got to stay out of the way. This photon here, I believe, is what's doing the AoE. So stay out of the way. And take big damage. And yeah, you're just focusing on doing damage here. If you're the ranged DPS, you'll see that player right here, the machinist. He's going to run to the edge of the stage for the super jump. Brute Justice jumps to the farthest player away. And then he casts Apocalyptic Ray on the party. And you need to be out of range of the Apocalyptic Ray. Players in our group, you see their super jump casting. We like to dot Brute Justice before he jumps away to get that extra damage. Because you won't be damaging him for a good 10 seconds once he jumps away. Apocalyptic Ray, shooting to us. I'm just barely out of range here. I know if my range DPS baits it all the way to the edge that I'm safe here, but not much closer than that or you will die. We do damage to Cruise Chaser here. That's why we get Brute Justice a little lower, because we can't get the uptime on him at the end. And then right around here, you can, AoE down if you have good 2-target AoEs. And you need to kill them within a few seconds of each other. So, you kind of want to get them down. Final Sentence is started getting cast as the other one went down. That was like about a 3-second cast time or something like that. But you need to kill it before that Final Sentence cast, because that's an enrage that starts when the other dies. All right, let's go over the toolbox real quick for BJCC. The one big thing to keep in mind here when you're progging this phase is to keep your movement as predictable as possible. People randomly getting Nisis they shouldn't be getting is kind of the big reason that wipes occur. So we have the chakram bait plus a DPS being assigned lightning and a healer being assigned water. Chakrams baited middle. Players come spread around the edge of the arena outside the chakram baited areas. They can't touch each other. They don't need to be spread exactly as this. They bait the invisible AoEs. And once the chakrams fire, they can move back in. Explosions happen around the arena. Players make sure not to overlap just yet. A big photon will come out. All players will be set to 1 HP. Healing comes out. the players exchange Nisi. They do the first Nisi pass. And lightning will come over here to Brute Justice, and everyone for the water stack will come to the 2 marker. And you'll notice we're in our assigned positions around the 2 marker. Water and lightning fire. And then after that, this is the water tornado dropped. Everyone needs to get away from it. The 2 mines are baited over here. The tank will eventually need to detonate them with mitigation cooldowns. And we're going to be doing enumeration very shortly after this. Here we set up for enumeration, call for a swap if necessary. Next, we're going to do another Nisi pass, our second Nisi pass. And then we're going to prep for water 2. So second water goes out, stack of 4 over here. The healer that got the first water debuff is not allowed to stack with them. That healer who has the water debuff handling the lightning mechanic with the tank. And then we have all players going to assign positions away from this water tornado. And we are prepped to blow up the CC shield and do our third Nisi pass after that. So shield breaks. We pass Nisi to the assigned player. This will not be our typical partner that we've been passing between. The third one has to go to the person with the appropriate debuff, asking for the Nisi over your head or vice versa. After that, we're going to move for the final water and lightning. And this one's done back up at the 1 marker. The 1 DPS who has Dropsy cannot join for that stack. Dropsy is the water resistance down debuff. So you won't see all of the DPS here. One will be missing. Lightning is done over here. And then the tanks and healers line up here, requesting or passing the appropriate gavel hammer. And the DPS join them appropriately, get behind the ice, which is indicated by the snowman. And you stay together until the gavel and the AoE damage resolve. And then you're free to move. The tanks need to be separated. They can be up here or just kind of anywhere out of the way. But they want to keep the bosses kind of close to the wall here. So you want to be able to damage Cruise Chaser once the super jump happens. The super jump bait comes out. Range DPS goes as far to the edge as possible. Brute Justice is then going to cast Apocalyptic Ray. The Machinist has to make their way around the stage, avoiding the Apocalyptic Ray. And then we AoE down the bosses together and kill them within a few seconds of each other. That is BJCC. Congrats if you made it this far. We will be jumping into Inception formation next.